I hope we're live. I think we're live. Alex, do you think we're live?
Yeah, I hope we're live too.
Yeah, you hope, but do you think?
I dream. I dream that we're live.
You dream?
Yeah.
Do you dream of a dream of time gone by?
No, not this early in the morning.
Not this, not this early in the morning. Okay, I think I'm still checking that we're live. So if we are live and you're seeing us, I apologize. Yeah, this looks pretty live. Cool. Hi, I'm Brian Francis, contributing editor to Gamasutra.com, and I'm joined today with Alex Waro. Alex, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm still Alex Waro. I'm still an editor at Gamasutra.com.
Nice.
And thank you so much for joining us as we stream Tyranny from Obsidian Entertainment.
Obsidian Entertainment and published by Paradox Interactive? It's Paradox Interactive, right?
Sure, I think it's Paradox Entertainment, but it could be interactive.
Yeah, whatever. Paradox. Those
They're
great.
from Paradox.
Those games.
Did I ever tell you the story of how... so this game was announced at GDC this year.
Yeah.
Which we were at. And we were on a podcast with Paradox chief Frederick Wester.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of a good game dev focused question to ask him because it had been a long day. So I said, Fred, where did the logo for Paradox Interactive come from? And if I remember right, he told me that it is the skeleton of a duck-billed platypus, which now that you look at it makes total sense, but up until now I had never seen.
Oh boy, that took me some time. Yeah.
Fun fact.
Let's talk about Tyranny. What is Tyranny, Alex? Can you explain that for our not necessarily Tyranny-focused audience, our audience who does not know Tyranny? Although maybe they might, given recent political results.
Well, yeah, I dream of a world where we all grow up not knowing Tyranny, but unfortunately that world is not our world. And today we are playing what you called a CRPG, which I guess is appropriate. This is a role-playing game for computers only, personal computers.
Yeah, which was a big deal back in the 90s.
Yeah, I guess so. We should talk about more of that in a minute, because I have feelings about like PC RPGs in the 90s. So Tyranny... announced at GDC this year, released this month from Obsidian, is a top-down isometric role-playing game built in Unity by Obsidian, and which the story puts you in a world as a guy who is working for the bad guys.
Or girl.
And the bad guys
playing
won.
a girl.
Playing a girl, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're a bad person. You work for a bad guy. The bad guys won. And then where we go from there is up to you.
Yeah. So this game actually, let's talk about some interesting things with this game because there's so many interesting things. It opens up with, after you make your character, you go through like a cool text adventure that's almost Firewatchy. Like, you go through a set of decisions that are nicely animated, and you set up some stuff for your character to have relationships with these two factions, the Disfavored and the Scarlet Chorus. Yeah. Because of this, that sets up how you start interacting with characters early on. Because basically the premise of the game is if you don't follow out the warlord's commands to deliver this edict, the whole valley is going to blow up and everyone's going to die. So if you want to save yourself and the people around you and whichever faction you feel particularly affiliated with, you have to beat the game in X number of in-game days. So that's kind of the basic setup, which is really different than their previous game, Pillars of Eternity.
Yeah, although we should say that game, which came out last year, is basically they're building Tyranny on the same engine. So the systems are totally different, and we should talk about the systems in a little bit. But this game, I think, was able to be turned around so quickly because they basically built it on the exact same engine as Pillars of Eternity. Yeah, and it looks very similar, as you can tell.
Yeah, so I've played Pillars of Eternity, and you've played it too, right?
Yeah, I played a bit of it.
Yeah, and I'm obviously playing this game, and I feel far more hooked into this game, I should say, than I did Pillars.
What does that mean? Let's dig into that, because when we're writing about games, we talk a lot about things like how drawn in we are, how hooked we are, how compelling it is. What does that mean? What do you mean when you say you're hooked into it?
I feel more compelled by the dialogue, like something about this setup of which is also largely constructed through the dialogue trees and a handful of in-game interactions. I feel more interested in trying to bounce these factions off each other, and the and the time limit, these are interesting constraints on that, versus Pillars seems so focused, and you can be whatever character you want, you can get started on these quests, and you can dive into this fantasy world filled with rich lore, and I was just like, this is compelling, and it's a good, like, turn my brain off a little bit and do some number crunching kind of game, but I feel like in so many ways RPGs have grown past a lot of what back then was super necessary, and are now, they're super good at handling those things in other ways, that some of the ways that CRPGs handle things just feels not as hooky. But by putting these constraints on the story scenario and the way the dialogue trees and skills are structured, like all these things seem to flow back to this dynamic of balancing powers and trying to get it done in time, which is Pillars didn't have that. Or if it did, I didn't get far enough in the game to experience any of that. Versus right off the bat, you sort of get.
All right, so let's do a fun design exercise. Why don't I, like, if you were to distill that down into like specific narrative tricks or tools that are used to make you feel that way, what do you think they are? Because when you talk about it, it sounds like you find the narrative structure of Tyranny, which is sort of idiosyncratic in that you are a special person. You have special powers. You know, you have like powers of authority. So you're well within that trope of video games, but it's not a hero's journey as far as I can tell. It's very much like you are going in to sort of make your own way in a place full of bad things and bad people competing with each other to do bad things. And there's no immediate quest to redeem or save anything.
Yeah.
Whereas in Pillars of Eternity, you start right out and you were just a wandering person who has to see a bad thing happen and then gets a quest to go solve that bad thing.
Yeah.
So what is it, do you think, about this different narrative specifically that you find so engrossing?
I think the fact that it sort of abandons a need to focus on... Sorry, I'm just looking through these items.
Go for it.
It abandons a need to focus on... quick, Flipsider 8099 is with us in the chat. Just quick shout out to Flipsider. I think it abandons a need to focus on those good and evil things. When you're shaping your character, you're spending less time. It's guiding you to a role playing experience, but it's not giving you so much freedom that it's not giving you so much freedom that you. Sorry, I'm having a hard time getting my thought out. But like to the point that you
playing games, talking at the same time is a hard business. To
the point that you don't feel like you have like much control over what's going on. Weirdly, like Pillars was pretty good about how broad you could go, but then like what does it really mean? Like you've made this special snowflake, but the special snowflake only has so much, is able to change some things in the world, but not really a lot. Versus in this game, you're constantly bouncing off what the game's throwing at you, and it just feels more dynamic. There's something more theatery and improv-y about it. In terms of those decision making, like I smacking that guy. Like morality isn't a concern because morality's been taken off the table. So now you're just trying to you're trying to benefit yourself the most.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're basically saying that there's no compunction to behave in a certain way that you think is correct.
It's more like you're trying to
can't.
You're constantly trying to read the most of the situation to not fuck it up.
Yeah, so the fun of the game is not in being the best, but it is in playing the role that you have imagined the best, and in that way it becomes a more theatrical experience.
Yeah, well, this is not good. The pretty just raised.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. We have both played just the beginning of the game, the first few hours. So one thing I noticed is that, and this is probably self-evident to anyone who's ever made a game or played a game, is that like because it doesn't have a stereotypical archetypal plot structure, like it's very interesting to play because you never know where it's going to go next. And you know, I also think that you better watch out with this guard lady. Yeah. So I also think that this game is it's really remarkable in that it basically shines a light on moral relativism, where and it plays with that idea in a way that we don't often see outside of what we typically call indie games. Like sort of like low budget, like narrative focused games that are more focused on doing interesting things with narrative than on, you know, having really complex systems. This has most of the systems of Pillars of Eternity, systems that are very reminiscent of what you call CRPGs. Those old Infinity Engine style isometric RPGs in the 90s. But it has a really crazy, weird story structure too, and that's really laudable, I think. And so far in the first few hours, they haven't dropped the ball.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very curious to see where this game goes, but I don't really know, and that's a rare feeling in games these days, especially again like games that you buy in a store and not say download on itch or play in a browser somewhere. Like, it's rare to feel like you don't know where this game is going to take you next.
Yeah.
To be kind of scared. Like, I don't necessarily. I'm not excited about playing this game because there's bad stuff everywhere, and it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
So.
I think also they made something that's really focused on replayability because you want to sort of see where the choices can lead you. You can see a lot of paths, and I want to ask. We're gonna have the games director on Friday, and I want to ask them about how they feel about letting players know that things could have gone differently. Real quick, Flipsider 99 just wants to say that their main hook is the soundtrack for a game. How do you feel about this game's soundtrack, Alex? And compared to, you grew up with more of these CRPGs in the 90s, right? Because I didn't.
Yeah, I did. I played a lot of video games in the 90s. I played your Baldur's Gates and your Planescape Torments. Not so much your Icewind Dales, but I played your Arcanum, which is from Troika. We can get into that in a minute. How I feel about this game's soundtrack is unclear because I only played it last night while watching Insecure on HBO with my girlfriend, which is a fantastic show with a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
But that's all about like I don't know. I have no idea how the music is in this game. I'm sure it's fine. You know, I honestly don't listen to music very often in games. It's sort of not something I pay much attention to. But I can totally respect if you're into that.
Yeah. Let me start working on this combat encounter here.
So can we just talk about CRPGs? All right. So
sure,
for those of you watching this now or later, Bryant calls PC RPGs from the 90s that are isometric CRPGs.
Yeah, isn't that really what they are?
I mean, they are CR. I mean, I guess so. CRPG would be a computer role-playing game, but like Fallout 3 is a CRPG. You can play that on a computer. It's a role-playing game, right?
But I thought
no?
I thought CRPG by now means something extremely specific.
Yeah, I find this fascinating. Maybe you're right. Like, this is not how I feel about it, but you're basically saying that because the style of Western computer role-playing games in the 90s became very popular for a while, which, you know, kind of Ultima, although Ultima went 3D, but like your Baldur's Gates, your Icewind Dales, your Planescape Torments, that isometric view was so iconic of that era that at the time, you know, in the 90s, like any role-playing game on a computer was a computer role-playing game. It wasn't like Fallout. Well, actually, I guess the original Fallouts were isometric, so they all share that in common. But like, to me, those are always just role-playing games on computers. Like Neverwinter Nights was a CRPG.
Yeah,
but now you're saying that like it's become so old that CRPG itself has become like a weird retro niche term.
Yeah,
for
because
this whole category
CRPGs
of
are now RPGs because RPGs are stolen from each other so much that like if a game has RPG elements, that's not like a surprise.
This is so fascinating to me. Maybe no one else cares, but like, so what is an RPG if not a CRPG?
Well, because JRPGs were completely different. And actually, this was an interesting point I saw on Twitter. Was that because JRPGs were on computers, they evolved on computers, and CRPGs evolved on CRPGs evolved on computers and JRPGs evolved on consoles. An interesting split happened where JRPGs were able to author so much original content the way they were because they didn't have much memory, so they were like trying to focus on, you know, getting what they could out onto the console. Versus CRPGs were able to save so many like random numbers, so that's why you can have like half this game, which I'm totally ignoring by the way, is taking place down here in this. This to me is like an old feature of CRPGs. This entire chain of things here, and this is because it's so pulled from D&D stuff. But there's so much information that a computer is able to store compared to a console that that to me, what's changed is that as more games can store that information, CRPGs, as you say, all RPGs on computers are computer RPGs, but the CRPG specifically is now harkening back to this engine, this look, this aesthetic, and this way that stats interact. I'm sorry if that was really complicated.
No, I mean, like, it's
this is so hard to
time
do.
and time again, it's very hard to make cogent, well-reasoned, and succinct arguments on a live stream while playing a video game.
Yeah.
But that's fine. We got an hour.
Yeah.
And I really want to. I find this fascinating, and anyone who has an interest in the game industry or how it evolves, or even discussing things like what kind of game you're making.
Yeah.
Or what you like about a given game design. I think this is kind of interesting because Brian is younger than I am, so I recently turned 30, and Brian recently turned, I think, 12. So he maybe did not. I'm just kidding. Yeah, he did not maybe play games the same way I did, and I look at like, so for example, you say like JRPGs and CRPGs are two different kinds of games, but like really Japanese RPGs started out on computers as well, right? Like you're thinking of JRPGs like
Final
Fantasy stuff, but
yeah,
you know, like you trace that stuff back, and like Japan had a really thriving PC game market before consoles ever really gained traction.
yeah,
And when you look at like the design of Final Fantasy and stuff, like if you go back and read interviews, those designers took a lot of inspiration from tabletop role-playing games,
yeah,
just like the designers of Wizardry and the designers of Baldur's Gate did.
yeah.
So I think it's maybe not, the line is not as clear as you might make it out to be, but it is also really interesting that we now have a kind of class of games that you can call like CRPG throwbacks, or what I would call like Infinity Engine alikes. Like this game, this whole thing is clearly became so popular that it can now like inspire a niche audience to buy games like this, and that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I agree with that statement. Flipsider is saying Flipsider wants to call this a isometric RPG.
Yeah,
as opposed to my phrasing. God, this guy is just taking hits. Sorry.
There definitely was like a very popular run of like isometric RPGs from your Fallout to your Baldur's Gate to Planescape to I don't know, I guess Arcanum by Troika, and then you can trace that all the way up to now with stuff like this, and I think Divinity is also very similar.
Yeah.
It's interesting actually. Obsidian was formed by a lot of, or counts among its number, a number of people who worked on games at Black Isle.
Yeah, it's a Black Isle, like basically Black Isle 2.0, which is partly why I was interested when they got the New Vegas stuff together.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, like, the continuing shift of talent means that I think it's maybe not, it's not even Black Isle 2.0 anymore. It's something all its own.
Yeah.
I was curious and interested to see that like Tim Kaine worked as a programmer on this game.
Yeah.
Tim Kaine, of course, created Fallout basically. At Play, and then went on to work on a lot of other games as well. So I don't know. This is just we can just call it a CRPG. I'm sorry I gave you a hard time. It can
no. I think that hard time was very valuable.
I don't know about that. Maybe.
Sorry, I'm just gonna wait for party members to heal her up here. I wanted to talk about, like, here's the thing. We talk about how this is such a throwback game. There's so many game systems in this game that other games have streamlined so much, but it brings back and still makes valuable. Like I said, the best twist. Oh, I wanted to talk about one really great twist, but I'll wait for a dialogue sequence for it to come up. Why am I not healing? Oh, wounds are cleared on rest. Okay, we're wounded. There was a great... there's so many, like, we talked earlier about how because of the two-faction system, like the dialogue trees, they've brought back these huge, sprawling dialogue trees that were a mark for these games. Versus, if we think back, like, BioWare has now, like, turned this into a chart thing, but, like, how do you feel these things have meaningfully changed over the years, like, to the point that RPGs have abandoned these, and why do you think it was worth bringing them back?
I don't know. It's hard to remember now because in the last couple of years, you know, you can trace it back to when video games broke big on Kickstarter in 2011, 2012 maybe earlier. After that, there was a rash of clear nostalgia grabs in terms of game design, right? So Wasteland 2, Double Fine Adventure, all these other games. Divinity Original Sin. So like now it's hard to remember a time when games like this weren't common if you wanted to get them.
Yeah.
And that's the case for almost any genre of game. You know, there's so many games out now. It's so comparatively easy to make a game relative to 5, 10, 20 years ago that like there are still niche genres, but there are no games that are really hard to get that I'm aware of. But you're right. There was a time when storytelling was maybe not the prime focus for game design. Like, and I say that after playing like Baldur's Gate and Planescape Torment, like those games put a lot of emphasis on trying to build interesting character relationships and trying to write quality dialogue and trying to. They did a lot of work with text, right? In part because the engines were limited in terms of like what you could animate and what you could show, and that need to do a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting with just words. It's kind of obviated by the way game design progressed for a while.
Yeah.
But I think it's back. I think game designers, if they're interested in doing like curious, interesting narrative work, they have lots of ways to do it. Like this game looks like a throwback to those old engines, but it's built in Unity.
Yeah.
And like I think there are more than ever lots of different ways to like tell stories in games.
Yeah.
So I think the time when this was a rare occasion has passed.
Yeah.
And you call BioWare as like sort of taking this idea and running with it, and that's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
There was a time post 90s, the pre-Kickstarter, when BioWare seemed to be like the preeminent or one of the leading lights in game narrative, choice-based gameplay. And now that has been like there are a lot more opportunities for devs to do that, but I don't know. There was definitely like a dark time there when games like this that focus on making choices and defining who your character is and making that the meat of the gameplay were few and far between.
Yeah. Let's see. Can you sort of, well, I guess real quick, can you do me a solid and sort of talk more about how you feel about like what's got you hooked on Tyranny?
Yeah. So you just try not to die here because that would be really bad.
Would make us look bad. We're supposed to be pro players on the stream. No, we're not.
Tyranny is maybe, for me, a couple hours in, the most interesting game of the year that I have played.
Interesting.
That doesn't mean that, yeah?
Is it going to be on your top 10 list?
I don't know. I mean, like, we are, like everyone else who talks about games for fun or for a living, we are discussing what games deserve to be sort of highlighted from the year.
Yeah.
Anyone who puts out a game is a champion in my mind. If you ship a game this year, you win. You're the best.
Alex is right now being the everyone gets a participation trophy guy. Which
is
ironic because I'm a millennial who got participation trophies.
I'm also a millennial who got participation trophies. So, no, I think game development is really, really hard. Even though the tools are in many ways easier to use than ever. Shipping a game is a feat. And if you shipped a game this year, you deserve a round of applause. That being said, I do, because where I work, I'm challenged to pick 10 from the year that were especially laudable. And it will be tricky to talk about bringing Tyranny into that list, given that it needs to be sort of finished up within the next week or two, and I don't know that I can finish this game in the next week or two.
Yeah. I don't know, I didn't hesitate last year to put games on my list that isn't really finished. Because games are weird, because we say narrative games, you need to get to the end to truly understand it, but, oh, crap.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like a different conversation, but I do think if you're going to talk about a game and talk about what it does in terms of design and narrative structure, like, it doesn't mean very much if you haven't fully seen how it can play out.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think Tyranny is fascinating. I'm really glad it exists, and a few hours in, I find it very depressing, but I'm compelled to play through it to see what they do within the limits they've created for themselves.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, we don't see a lot of devs experimenting with moral relativism. Very rarely. Like this is if you play visual novels, or if you play interactive fiction, if you like to hang out on itch.io, you can play lots of games that put you in interesting, compromising situations or identities you don't normally inhabit, and that's fantastic. And you don't see that if you go to GameStop. You go to GameStop, you're gonna mostly get like mostly dudes, some ladies, mostly dudes, running around and saving the world.
Yeah.
So the fact that this is so different is fantastic.
I may be a little. I may be close to getting bummed out here.
You can do it. I believe in you. But here's the thing: like, if you die, is that such a bad thing? Like, that's another thing in this game, because you're a bad person who's helping other bad people do a thing, and if they fail that thing, they're all gonna die. Like, would it be so bad if you failed?
Is that really?
I don't know.
Is that really? Are you saying I'm a bad person, Alex?
Yeah,
I don't know how I'm
absolutely.
role-playing this game. Actually, the role-playing's a little interesting.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. People who are watching this or thinking about studying this game for game design sort of tips or nuggets, like how do you design a game about being an evil person without just being a huge bummer all the time? And this game walks an interesting line because, you know, it's very conversation driven. Like the first 3 hours, I spend about an hour and a half just talking to people, and you have lots and lots of options of how to react and what to say.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of gray area, I guess. I'm trying to avoid tropes here, but like there's a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
And given RPG these days, you could expect, like, if you had a choice to make, a big narrative choice, you can expect a good answer, an evil answer, a morally gray answer, and a I want to think about this, I'll come back later answer. Yeah. And here there are, instead of one, there are like 6 morally gray answers. That's all you get.
Yeah.
And the question is less about like doing the good or the bad thing, and more about which side do you help.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. Like that feels more like real life than most sort of traditional RPG narratives. So, but I don't know. Like, I could be wrong. Like, this could all go sideways. It's hard to imagine that this game could play out for 20 hours or what have you and not give you an option to be a good guy. Like, but that in itself is fascinating. Like, as a player of video games, as a video game enthusiast, it's, you know, I can't comprehend a game narrative that doesn't allow you to do the right thing.
I found it interesting so far the ways you can even just being kind seems to be subvert what the characters expect of you. Like, you can be totally, like, cool interacting with these rebels and still get into a fight with them, and it seems to have options down the line for where that goes. Though these guys are all getting... I made it through the fight, oh my god.
Congratulations!
Oh, that was hard.
Terrible.
Yeah.
You're a monster. You just, like, butchered a bunch of, like, freedom fighters.
They fucking... I don't know. I don't like those jerks. They just made that very hard. Yeah, we're gonna have mercy, don't worry. Okay, keeping an eye out for that iron, because, these guys were definitely getting their hands on some. Because there's a quest right now. If we're in this area, we're supposed to be looking for some iron.
Sure, yeah. So I think, and you know, another thing this brings to light is like just how strong game design can influence players' behavior. So there are multiple points when you can do the right thing, sort of, like within the scope of your power. You can be merciful. But you will lose favor with your companions. You will inspire fear in them sometimes. You will piss off whole factions.
Yeah.
And I found myself in just a few hours I've been playing, kind of wavering. Like I might, you know, hover over the choice in a given dialogue box that says "spare the prisoners," and then it's like, wait, I really need this power that I unlock by keeping my faction rep at a certain level. And I'm sure if I spare these prisoners, they're not going to like me anymore. And that choice has always been or hasn't always been, but like you've seen choices like that before in other games, but like usually there's a good path that you can go on that gives you equal powers. Whereas here, like, you have to be evil no matter what. So, you know, is it worth being a little less evil and losing access to a powerful ability? Or should you just go and be as evil as everyone else is?
Yeah. And
also be able to play the game more easily.
Yeah,
like that's
right now I'm caught in an interesting conundrum where I'm trying to solve this fight through dialogue because I really don't want to deal with this bullshit. Pardon me. But Barrack's whining that I'm not going to try and kill them. Let's see if I can do that.
Yeah, and you know, as you can see here, like, you're losing loyalty. And the idea of a loyalty quest or minion, or I shouldn't say minion, sorry, a companion loyalty has been an established trope of RPG design for years now. Like BioWare's like done pioneering work in that area.
Oh god, thank God! I didn't want to fight that.
Yeah, but like, do you want that guy's loyalty? Like, he's evil. Like, everyone here is terrible. So why would you, like, it's so strange. Like, it subverts the idea of a loyalty quest and maintaining loyalty because, you know, like, do you, well.
Yeah, I lost favor of everyone.
Yeah, I think we solved this quest in very different ways.
Yeah. You probably murdered all of them, didn't you?
Yeah. So actually, we could talk about this forever, but
Yeah,
I
we're
want
just
to
gonna keep talking
it.
about morality.
It's just,
Flipsider99 says, trying to solve this with dialogue because I don't want to deal with this bullshit. Quite an endorsement of the combat system. I don't know. Okay, here's the thing. Well, I don't know. In RPGs, I view solving things with dialogue as a way to... If a fight, like, I just went through a really challenging fight, and the thought of going through another fight was unappealing to me somewhat, and I don't know, I felt like the difficulty curve doing its job of making me... That felt like the difficulty job doing its work of offering me another way out. Like, I have a tank character... That doesn't necessarily mean I want to solve everything through combat. Like, it's when I say dealing with this bullshit, I mean dealing with a hard fight. Like, I don't want to necessarily. I don't know. That's what I mean by that. The combat system, I think, is.
So you're role playing,
Yeah,
like because you're scared.
Yeah,
You
my
don't wanna deal with
character
this
was
fight.
tired. Yeah,
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we should talk about the combat system because I think it's interesting, and systems like this are relatively unique in contemporary games. There's nothing much like this besides Pillars of Eternity from last year and the Divinity games that comes to mind.
yeah.
How do you feel about it? I noticed there were some small but significant changes from the way combat works in Pillars, and I don't know that I really like all of them that much, to be honest.
It's
But
it took some getting used to. The turn-based system is a weird thing because like you tell it to use a move and it doesn't use it instantly. You have to wait for the counter to go down.
I think that was in Pillars too. That's
It was. Maybe I just don't understand these games. Like this is actually a problem I had as a kid. Was every time I tried to play these games, the combat system was so complicated.
you know what it is. You never played tabletop role-playing games, so you're not familiar with like initiative.
Yeah,
and
it
rounds.
took me a while. Like now I play D&D obviously and tabletop stuff, but
Oh, does it all make sense now? Do you go back and go, oh, finally?
yeah. So that and just I've played so many weird games in my life now. Like games make more sense now as an adult than they did as a child.
Yeah, it also like that's like a double-edged sword, right? Like here, like nobody who wasn't familiar with a game like this would have an easy time playing this game. Like even I, coming into this game, was kind of turned off by how much lore there is. Like when you go into the opening
that's what
section,
pushed me away from. That's what pushed me away from Pillars. Was that there was just so much lore in here. I'm like, the lore is all background for you. The lore is actually I forgot to take advantage of it there. The lore is actually. I feel like it's a Twine thing. Like you can mouse over dialogue and it'll tell you a little bit. But I remember that from Age of Empires back in the day. That was how I got into a lot of history stuff by learning things from Age of Empires.
It might have been an Age of Empires, but I do want to call out here again for any developers who are struggling with ways to seamlessly integrate their lore into their game, like without having just have reams and reams of dialogue or a codex somewhere. Like that's fine. You should definitely keep a codex with all your imaginary plants and animals and wars and stuff. But here, this game, it has Bryant can mouse over text, and it will show them what that is and what it means to the character.
Yeah.
And that is a really smart, simple way of allowing the player to learn more about what's going on without requiring them to ask dialogue questions or go to a codex or anything.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that, actually.
Yeah. Like, see, like, I can show it off right here. Like, you're probably not seeing it on your screen yet, but on here. So now I can see Forge Bound. The Forge Bounds are Mage Assist, Bound to Cairo Service. Like, this is lore. But also, I want to point out, when you talk to one character, the multi-face dude, I have a fun thing to talk about him in a moment. But when you talk about him, he leaves little dialogue bits. You have to mouse over on the green text to find some of that dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's an intriguing use of like a piece of game design to talk to the player, right? So this is one of the reasons why I like it, and there are others that you'll see as you play longer, which is like, for people that don't understand, there's a character who's talking, and he has bits of his dialogue that are highlighted that indicates to the player they can mouse over and learn more. But for that specific character, because he has like a weird telepathy ability, when the character mouses over the text, they see dialogue directly from that character that only goes into their head.
Yeah.
And that's a small but like really interesting touch, and it allows someone to convey multiple layers of communication in a single conversation.
Which I think is a really cool thing for this kind of game to do, because I read a book once. It was the Bartimaeus trilogy, which was about a genie and a British magician dealing with a genie, and that book used footnotes to do the same thing. And I think it's a really clever. I love that mechanic myself.
That is a whole thing. I think it's House of Leaves. Yeah. And maybe Pale Fire by Nabokov, but I can't remember. There's a whole subgenre of books that have multiple layers of story, and they use things like footnotes and stuff to convey it. It's good to see games doing more of that. I'm sure there are plenty of like Twine games and interactive fiction games that have done this before.
Yeah, but I like seeing it in my other games too.
Yeah, and it's funny to I feel bad every time I try to draw a line there, so I want to apologize for anyone. Like, in a sense, a game made with Twine is no different than a game made with Unreal, or in this case, Unity.
Yeah.
But Twine games typically don't get the same kind of promotion that a game like Tyranny will, although that's changing, because I really only seen it promoted on Steam right next to a bunch of visual novels. But like, there is still a notable difference. Like, it's interesting to see someone playing with those kind of narrative conceits and narrative tricks in a game like this.
Yeah, even Titanfall was doing some like Titanfall 2 had those little like brief bits where you could do the dialogue choices, and that's so normal. But it's a lot when games can like. There were like little ways that those dialogue trees went that were actually kind of interesting, where like sometimes you would, unlike other games which clearly mark this one will advance the conversation, this is side dialogue, Titanfall 2 was kind of hitting it, and it let you it kept the cards close to the chest so that you could figure out yourself what was get you more information and what would advance the dialogue, which I think was crucial.
I guess so. I found that really annoying because like a lot of Titanfall involves you doing wall jumps and double jumps and like acrobatic maneuvers, and when you're doing that with a stick and a jump button and then maybe also a trigger, it's really hard to reach a thumb over and tap the button to talk to your robot.
Yeah.
But I love talking to robots in video games or real life, so I'll always make the effort.
Yeah. Epatathis wants to know: are those the difficulty, the percent of or the percent of success, or the current stat when they show numbers in the dialogue? That's the stat you currently have that reflects if you can do it or not. It hasn't seemed to affect it, like if you have 32 but not 36. It hasn't seemed to indicate like it's easy, medium, or like it's not a percent chance of success. It just seems it seems to be just a check, not a
It's pass fail. If you have that number, then you pass it. There doesn't seem to be all the random number generation seems to be confined to combat.
Yeah.
Although again, we're only a few hours in, so who knows? Like maybe this all just becomes like a giant, I don't know, tower defense game 10 hours in. Who knows?
That's happened. Assassin's Creed Revelations.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this game's combat system is interesting. I think there's a lot of depth and complexity there that is perhaps off-putting to people.
You have
who
to
just
want
want
it, though. It's not combat, I would say, and I apologize to the devs because we're going to talk to them later about this, but it's not. You have to want what this game has to offer very much. It's not something that opens itself up and says, hey, this is the way you'll become a mighty adventurer. You have to say, do you want to be a mighty adventurer by crunching these numbers? Then yes, this is the game for you. I'd say that's just, I feel like, what the genre's always been.
Yeah, in a way, it's hard for me to really tell because I came in, as you said, in the before times, in the 90s, and before that I had played a bit of tabletop role playing games, so I knew what D&D was, I knew how it worked, I knew what dice rolls were.
Yeah. I
knew what leveling up was, I knew what feats were, and so coming into like Baldur's Gate, which is just a rip off of I mean, it's an adaptation of D&D. Like I slipped right into it with no questions. Now that Obsidian is sort of back and doing these kind of games again, like with Pillars, I had a tricky time getting into that combat system, but I actually thought it was in many ways better than the early Infinity Engine games because it had things like facing and flanking and stuff like that is modeled in D&D but not very well, I think, on the tabletop version. And building a game for a PC, like for a game engine rather than like a tabletop group, allows you to automate a lot of stuff that makes combat more interesting, like facing and flanking and stuff and engagement. Some of that stuff is here and some of it isn't, and I sort of wonder why they got rid of it. And like a lot of complexity that I think is kind of needless is included in this combat system. So there's like a lot of there's multiple kinds of damage types, multiple kinds of magic damage types, multiple ways that your hits can hit somebody, and I'm sure it all makes sense if you take 5-10 minutes to sit down and read the combat system and like master it, but it's not immediately apparent. Like if you know the difference between a hit and a glancing blow or whatever and a full miss based on your deflection score without having read the rules in depth, I will be very impressed.
Yeah.
And I think that's a tricky question for game designers because I bet the combat system in this game is pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's so complex at first glance that I'm driven away from it. Like, I don't want to have to worry about maximizing my deflection score or making sure my character can disengage without taking attacks. Like, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for the story. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm faced with an interesting decision, and I feel like this is a lighter version of something I first encountered in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, where you like meet two characters, they make their arguments before you, and then you make a decision. And luckily,
I remember it. Yeah,
they've set up a good role. They've set up a good role here that you're the kind of person who makes these decisions. And they've weirdly I feel that there's something interesting here where they've loaded you with so much knowledge of how these two factions work that you can only come to a decision. Like you're sort of interpreting all these things based through the lenses of the characters. So this is a really cool game design trick here. I just want to point out, if you come to this quest while playing Tyranny, this is a really cool little dialogue option that I feel is successful because the game has done so much backloading you with how these factions work through the decisions you made so far. But that being said, I'm having a hard time making a decision because all the arguments are really good ones.
Yeah, I'm 7 seconds behind you, and I don't think I've faced the decision, so I can't really give you any guidance. You're gonna have to go with a gut on this.
Yeah, although I've been sitting here for more than 7 seconds, so you might be able to see it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, then I definitely have not.
Let's talk through this. How do you feel we should solve this, Alex? Did you come to this decision?
No, I haven't. And this zone looks familiar, but
it's the first zone where these people's zone. This guy on the right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never faced this decision before. Let's role play through it. Why don't you let me and the audience in on what we're deciding here?
Red guy on the left wants his sword back, his falx, that was taken from him by purple guy when he beat him, and then he was recruited to the Scarlet Chorus. But now he survived the Scarlet Chorus trials and has come back for his falx. And Alex, you know how these two factions work. So the guy on the right saying, "No, I won't give it back. It's mine. It was a trophy in battle." And the guy on the left is saying, "I don't have a proper weapon. I was told to get a proper weapon. This is my proper weapon, so I'm here to get it." And our options are, it's a trophy. Let this guy keep it. This guy's boss, Graven Ash, says insists on proper rationing, stockpiling bronze you won't use, like blah blah blah. Give him back because you're wasting a weapon. Or say it's a trophy, but make honor demands you make a good faith to assist an ally. If you won't give that, you must give him a proper alternative. Kind of splitting the baby in two. No, the actual splitting the baby in two is the falx is an artifact of a conquered people. I claim it, so neither of you have it.
Yeah,
I want to go for 3. 3 makes the most sense to me.
3 is the right answer.
Well, 3 is the right answer, but I feel like 1 and 2... I feel like this question from a design perspective is the designer is telling to the player, if you feel like you need curry with either faction, here's a way to stack it. And I feel like 3 is a trap, because it's going to... 4 is definitely going to screw me up with both, but I feel like 3 is also a trap.
Huh. So yeah, I mean, that's an interesting way to think about it. I would not look at the design implications at all. I would just be
this is definitely a quest where it says, hey, how are you feeling about your relationship with these factions? Here's a chance just to boost your numbers. Like, that's where I feel like the designers put that in here. I've talked with Rick Ernst, who's now at Riot, because he used to work on these kind of... He did this a lot with RPGs when he was working on RPGs. He was like, this is the kind of thing... He sort of explained to me, this is... You give the player an opportunity to address something through this kind of scenario. Like, you leave them little ways to make sure their numbers are balanced the way they are. I'm feeling okay with my numbers for both factions, so I am going to go with 3. Like, I don't feel particularly disadvantaged with one or the other.
Yeah, sure.
And I got favor with Tunon. Who's one of my guys?
He is your guy.
Yeah.
He's your boss, I think.
Compromise.
He's your creepy boss. Yeah. There's no game that immediately springs to mind that's quite like this. And that may be because it's the end of November, and so the games on my mind are mostly Titanfall 2, Watch Dogs 2, Dishonored 2.
Oh, and I got favor with the disfavored.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, I don't like. Now is a tricky time to really speak cogently about the state of games as a whole, because we're just so deluged by big budget games. But this game's, for better or worse, this game feels very idiosyncratic in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
And it seems well made.
Yeah.
And It's interesting choices.
I'm going to make this dialogue choice, but then I'm fair warning, after I'm done with this next part of the quest, I have to sit in my inventory and make sure everyone's gear is up to speed.
Sure. I mean, that's the best part of a CRPG.
Yeah, inventory management. That's what we're here, guys.
I will say, like, I made fun of this game's lore in the beginning, and I think it's probably a little too much up front. But nevertheless, I think it's a really interesting direction to take. And it's not immediately apparent. Like, I don't know how much reading you've done on this game, but if you just played this game by itself, when do you think it takes place? Like, time-wise. Like, I know it's a magical world and with a bunch of crazy stuff, but, like, what do you think the general era is? Is it medieval? Is it Gothic? Is it Renaissance? What do you think?
Well, given the European influence... Shit, I'm going to give you a really complicated answer.
Okay.
I'd say it's somewhere. It's given that we're dealing with an overlord, given that we're dealing with some magic users. I feel like elsewhere in the world there's a renaissance going on. Like the world is burgeoning on some new tech. But
yeah.
We're still fighting with foot soldiers here, so because it's but we still have I don't know. That's the weird thing is history. You have to figure out which lens of history you're viewing it as.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you an easy answer. When I picked this game up last night and started playing through it, I was like, oh, this is like a cool, magical, medieval world.
It implies the war's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, like 400 years, something like that. But I was like, oh, this is clearly just another medieval game. There's guys in armor, they have swords and spears, they run around, they stab each other.
It's a pretty good insult. Leaving a ramp-shaped pile of corpses. Like actual strategy assault.
Yeah, and it turns out when you go to read interviews with the developers, or if you read any of the lore, this game is set in like the turn from the Bronze to the Iron era. So like the armies and the fighting styles and the characters are modeled on like I think Romans, maybe Greeks. But like one of the guys in this dialogue here, Graven Ash, his whole team is like based upon Greeks, right? As they transition as they fought with Bronze. So you'll see like hoplite equivalents, although they're called something else, and you'll see like shield bearer equivalents. They're called something else.
Real quick, right now for those watching the stream, I'm mousing over. Alex, you won't be able. It's not live for you, but for those watching at home, I'm mousing over right now. This is what, in my opinion, is the coolest thing. This is that sub-dialogue thing we were talking about over here. I mouse over the text. You see extra dialogue that he's saying to you. He's talking to you right now, not the other guy. Sorry, continue.
Oh, I just think it's something worth pointing out for people who are designing games or writing stories. Like, this game looks very much like a Baldur's Gate or Pillars of Eternity. And, in practice, it plays very similarly. Like, you have swords and you fight other people with swords and bows and spells. But if you read into the text and you read into the different things, like, the world is subtly different. Everything is about bronze and iron. Mm-hmm. It's not about, like, mithril and elven steel or something like that. As far as I can tell, pretty much everyone is a human so far. There's not a lot of weird races or anything, but that's not a big deal.
Although, Voices in the Rat, I don't know what's up with this guy.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's the point. There are these weird things that are not immediately classifiable as fantastical, right? Yeah. Like it's not an orc or an elf or a sprite. It's just a weird glowing man.
Yeah.
With a floating face thing. And that sets this game apart in small but subtle ways. Like, the currency is not gold coins or bronze coins, it's rings.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It also, like, the first time someone said, like, come and, do you want some rings? Come and get some rings. I was like, are we playing Sonic the Hedgehog? Like, what's going on here? But aside from that kind of awkward comparison, there really is nothing quite like it. And that's notable, I think.
Curse you, mother's fucks.
Yeah. I also think the way they open the game is something worth studying. You mentioned it's like Twine, and it is similar, but it's not quite as Twine-like as Firewatch, which literally opens with a little choose-your-own kind of adventure thing that is, I think, it was either initially built in Twine or was in fact built in Twine, and then just had a interface layered over it. This is like a little different. If anyone's seen Game of Thrones on HBO, there's like a very Game of Thrones opening sequence-esque map with like cities and stuff that rise up out of it. And then and this is all optional, you can just jump right into the actual game. But if you choose to play through this prologue, you make choices about what your character did during the invasion, and then things on the map shift and change depending on how that plays out.
Yeah.
And I've already seen like those changes.
You and I are probably
significant
playing
effect.
really different games right now because of it. Because
I
there's
don't
no
know
way
about-
we made similar choices.
Yeah, I don't know about really different, but definitely different. I've seen you went to a totally different place than I did in the beginning. You have a totally different title than I do.
Yeah.
So it's I think that is super interesting. And if there's nothing else you take away from this game, that is something you can see right up front that has a significant influence on the game, and is cool. Like as a player, that's really that's fun. Like it's fun to sort of pick and choose your own adventure before you get into the actual adventure.
Oh boy, everyone's yelling at each other right now.
Yeah, you're clicking through a lot of dialogue here.
Yeah. You're all against us. Let's see. I need to assert my dominance in this.
Now I'm 7 seconds behind, so I can't do this. But if you want to do voices, that would be great. If you could just maybe.
Well, there's already voices. They're already doing. This is a voice acted scene.
Oh right.
Yeah. So the audience is already getting that. I would just be messing with it. Oh, there is no compromise here.
Well, we're playing games on Twitch, so you have to talk through all of your decisions and then kind of hem and haw. How are you feeling?
How am I feeling? I'm trying to figure out. It's like I'm trying so hard to figure out who am I going to send into this like thing right now. I'm trying not to fuck it up. Let's see.
Fair.
Let's see. No, it's not this one. Yeah, I'm going to send the Scarlet Chorus in.
Stand with the madman and his rabble.
I think it will be interesting to watch how this game does. You know, we're coming here to the end of our stream.
Yeah.
But we'll be back on Friday
With
doing more of this with the
with the
developer
lead
review, hopefully.
designer.
Yeah.
Let me get that name real quick.
You leave my camp.
We're gonna have Brian Hines on. He's the games director, actually.
Yeah. He worked on South Park: Stick of Truth and a couple other things. But this is I think the first thing he's been one of the lead designers on, so that's kind of interesting. But anyway, I think it's fascinating to watch how this game does. It came out late in the year with a bunch of other games,
Yeah.
including other mobile RPGs like Final Fantasy 15. So, you know, I will be curious to know how well it does.
Yeah.
But you know, more than ever before, I think it's quite possible for game studios and game developers to survive and thrive on a niche audience. You know, we've seen that with Spiderweb Software. I think we sort of see it with sort of Zachtronics and stuff, and also Obsidian and Larian, who does Divinity Original Sin. Like, those studios cater directly to a specific audience, and they seem to do well enough to continue making games. And that's fantastic. So I was about to say, like, I don't know how well this game will do, given that it just came out in the middle of what I feel like is a pretty crowded year. At a crowded time of year, but you know, this game is for a specific audience, and I don't think they have a lot of other games like this. So I don't know. I hope it does well.
And that we never meet on the wrong side. I've had enough of your justifications and empty.
How you doing in there?
Losing my tank.
Yeah? That's no good.
No. You aren't worth it. I have too much
Let's
to
see.
accomplish in service
Sorry, I'm
to
really
the great
focused on this.
general to deal
No, I want to hear what's going on. Fill me in on your inner monologue. Like, what deep moral crisis are you in?
I'm trying to see if I can in my head. I'm like, this feels like a puzzle. Like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like I'm trying to empathize with Barrick. It feels like I'm trying to play the numbers game to keep him on my team because I really want another tank.
You play this game very analytically. I tend to just make choice. Like, I tend to assume that a character can, like, there must be a way to get through this game playing only the main character with no compatriots
Yeah.
and no friends. So I just try to play in a way that makes sense, not in a way that like gives me the best characters.
Let's see.
Uh,
Yes, I kept him.
Did you punch him in the gut? Because I'm
No,
a few seconds behind.
I used lore and said you just struck an agent of the court, so I really could have him fucked.
Yeah, I mean he's like literally encased in metal, so it feels like punching him in the gut would be a really bad idea.
Yeah. Okay. I think that turned out. Well, I don't know why. I don't know why they force you so early in the game to like reject one faction like that.
Well, because the Scarlet Chorus is terrible. That's why. I mean, this disfavored is clearly the team to beat.
Oh, I fucked over the disfavored.
What? They're the best. I mean, they're not. They're terrible.
And now we're
Everyone's
gonna
terrible.
see how the game differs.
But the
I don't know if-
Scarlet
I don't know
Chorus
if-
is idiots. They're all just like really bad at everything.
No,
Okay,
no,
so-
but they're all the ones who like through the. I don't know. The disfavored seem to be like the idiots to me.
No, see, this is what's so interesting to me is
Also,
like,
Verse is a better character.
but Verse is horrible. She just murders. She murdered her parents.
Verse is very thoughtful. You're talking to the.
So I think that's really interesting in that because both sides have to be evil, the way they sort of give you outs to be sort of merciful or good
Yeah.
are about law and chaos.
Yeah.
And so the disfavored is very much like, we have a set of rules, we play by the rules, and if you break the rules, you die. But the rules allow for things like honorable surrender.
Yeah.
But if you honorably surrender and then attack again, you're dead. Whereas
Yeah.
like Scarlet Chorus is like, well, we'll just do whatever we want. But we often let people choose to join us or die, which means that if you don't want to kill people, a lot of times you have to sort of go to the chorus and be like, well,
Yeah.
could you just spare these people and take them into your army? And
Yeah.
then, like in a way, you can tell yourself that's the morally right thing to do, because the chorus is so disorganized they can then escape.
Yeah.
But like, it's such a strange skew on the typical good versus evil path progression.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm working through the stuff through the inventory system here. Feel free to.
We have 4 minutes left in our fantastic Wednesday stream, and you're going through your inventory. You're going to play
Yep.
Tetris right now. What are you doing?
Yep, I'm playing Tetris because I am making sure. This is so important to me to make sure I've got
All
the
right.
best gear equipped.
Well, then, with the pressure off for me to actually offer cogent commentary, I just want to say, like, the spell creation system is
Yeah.
great. You should
I
click
haven't
over to
messed
it.
with it. I'm playing a tank.
Oh, well, see, that was your first mistake. If you play a wizard or click on a wizard, like your guy with a beard there, you can make your own spells using components you find in the world.
Oh.
And it's kind of a silly system. Like, it doesn't make a ton of sense.
Where is it?
It's magic.
Is it
It's
with
the
these
little
scrolls?
star icon
Which star icon?
on the top. Star icon. The scroll is your quest. The little star icon is your spell thing.
Oh, spell creation. Oh.
Yeah. But what this reminds me of is Morrowind, because in Morrowind,
I don't know
the
any
Elder
core
Scrolls-
sigils. I really fucked up.
Yeah, in Morrowind, there was the designers had built the game so that players had limited control over the components of spells,
Yeah.
which was fantastic, and it allowed you to sort of customize the game to your much more heavily and sort of like make a much stronger stamp on the way your character played and interacted with the world.
Yeah.
I think too few games allow this kind of control. Like, you can often craft stuff. That's crafting is now like a trope, a cliche. But it's rare to see spell crafting be a thing.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that.
I'm trying to
It reminded
decide.
me of Morrowind.
Lantry's a mage, right?
I don't know what Lantry is. That's
yeah,
the other
because he
thing.
uses a dagger. He uses a quill. Freaking.
Yeah, something else we didn't mention that's worth noting is like in the isometric RPGs of the 90s, you had classes typically. You
Yeah.
had mage, wizard, fighter, whatever. And then in Pillars, you had something very similar. Whereas here, everything, you can pick kind of a worded class in the beginning, like a war mage or something or whatever, but it's not really a class. It's just like a set of starting skills. And
Yeah.
then you just kind of level up skills by using them.
Yeah.
Much in a way, like very much like the Elder Scrolls, to the point that you can actually train skills. You
Yeah.
can train 5 skills per level,
Yeah.
which is like literally right out of Skyrim. And I like the system a lot. It. I don't want to say it's more realistic because we're talking about men with swords and spells and funny hairdos, but
It's nuggety. It's interactive. It's you picking your way and pulling your way through systems.
it gives the player greater control over their own story,
Yeah.
and that's fantastic.
All right. Well, we are coming to the end of our stream here. Like I said, we're going to be talking to the games director on Friday.
Yeah.
Alex, what are your last thoughts about CRPGs? Because this is a real this kind of RPG is it's a very big thing for you, right? Sorry, we had this
I
discussion
guess
earlier.
I don't know. Like, yeah, everyone
You grew up with these
everyone
games.
gets into games. If you get into it as a kid, you get attached to something that maybe is not as good as you value it. But for me, yes, PC RPGs in the 90s were a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad to see that the genre, if you will, and the audience for those games is alive and well in 2016.
Yeah.
Go play Baldur's Gate. You should play Planescape Torment. Planescape Torment is still one of my top recommendations for writing in games.
Uh-huh.
I haven't played it in about 5 or 10 years, so maybe that's just me being nostalgic. But I really think it's an exemplary game when it comes to writing and narrative design.
Yeah. I just keep being so look here. I literally just let these guys all fight each other. I just keep being interested in what this game, like I said up front. I think the thing I take home from this is that I'm just so much more interested in what this game has to offer than a conventional RPG about these sorts of things. So that's my last thought for the day. Time to take us offline. Thank you all for joining us today. Please be sure to subscribe to our Twitch channel. We are regularly streaming games and interviewing developers, and it's a really good time. This is your chance often to, we're not doing it today, but this is your chance to ask questions of the people who make the games that either you want to make, or you want to work on, or that you want to play. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Flipsider and Papo Tejas, for asking great questions and having great commentary. And we'll see you all on Friday at 3 p.m. EST. See ya.
Bye.